it seems to me that the nature of consciousness versus the soul and or spirit, it's just kind of confusing. The language is not clear as to what these words actually mean. And I think that there's valuable information from NDE research, quantum physics, as well as books like the Bible and the Gita. So I just put into the AI search field the difference between consciousness and spirit or soul. And so you can read these for yourself. You can see here, though, just briefly, consciousness is awareness, while soul and spirit are often described in a non-physical essence of being, of a being. So you can read these, and you'll probably say, yeah, I kind of thought of it like this. And here's another one. This is for soul and spirit, same search. And I'm going to give a viewpoint that you can consider if you'd like. So the gateway document, the gateway process, originated as a consequence of Robert Monroe's out-of-body experiences in the 1970s. He developed this HemiSync device that could induce out-of-body experiences. The military was interested in it because strategic applications, obviously like remote viewing, that type of stuff, as opposed to, stuff that would be consistent with the beautiful message of the Gita and the Bible. So the beautiful thing about this document is that Colonel McDonnell, you can see here, Colonel McDonnell did a deep dive into quantum physics for us and demonstrated, look at what we're told here. Encourage pursuit of full self-knowledge by all individuals involved in the foregoing experiments to enhance objectivity in out-of-body observation and thinking, and to remove personal energy blockages likely to retard rapid progress. He's like, you got to clear your mind like you're a yogi to get ready for this thing, and be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. So here we are in the time-space, the carbon-based dimension, and this is the clicked out non-carbon-based dimension, and this is, of course, the absolute in infinity, which he referred to as pure conscious energy, that penetrated or serves as a foundation for, obviously, the absolute itself, but also intermediate and the time-space dimension that we are in. And so it appears that we are living in a type of torus field, it appears. So with this information, we can take a more scientific view of the information that we get from religions. And really, we should just ignore the religions in terms of their beliefs because they're made up from the books. It would be much better to take the information in the books and apply it to what we know from science and from near-death experiences. And if you want to look up Jason Paget, fractals and holograms, he's an acquired savant after a traumatic brain injury due to a mugging, and he sees the world as fractals and as a hologram. And so this was back in 1983, and Jason is now 2025, so 40 years later. He actually has a beautiful theory of the nature of our holographic or hologrammic reality. Okay, so this is the best available evidence that I think we have. So you have science, multiple universities, so NYU, you've got Harvard, UCal Riverside, you go right on down the line, Baylor, NYU, Virginia Commonwealth, and it just goes on and on and on. So, and also over in Europe, here's King's College in Europe. So they're studying near-death experiences and trying to characterize it better. Now for since 1970s, they've been looking at near-death experiences at the University of Virginia. And since the mid-late 60s, they've been looking at reincarnation at the University of Virginia at the medical school for over 50 years, studying reincarnation and then shortly thereafter near-death experiences. And they've got tons and tons of evidence, tons of published papers, and the International Association for Near-Death Studies is who published this book, and it was started by Dr. Bruce Grayson and his colleagues who were at the university, or when Bruce was at the University of Virginia. Of course, this is the Nobel Prize winning Erwin Schrödinger saying Atman is Brahman, which basically means that consciousness, whether it's absolute or in physical matter-looking vehicles like us, are the same. And this is, of course, from that article that I had on the first image that I showed. So when we have a near-death experience, the true self comes out of the body and realizes that the mind-body complex, the satana, the false self, is not who we are. And the experience that near-death experiencers have is very different than what we are told by religions, and that's across the board with all the religions. Now, Bruce Grayson, again from the University of Virginia, wrote this article. You can see it was back in 2007. So although no one described their NDE as a religious experience, they're not religious. In other words, no one is told, go back and worship Jesus, go back and worship Krishna. You got to really check out Ahura Mazda or Marduk. They got it going on. That's not what happens. They say spiritual, which again, this is problematic because what does the word even mean, spiritual? Non-physical? Some say, there's various ways to define this. So I think there's a much better way to do this, and I think we can do it based upon the language that we've been given in the Gateway document, because it opens up language into quantum mechanics and the quantum entanglement, which is consistent with multiple keywords that are used in the Vedic literature: Atman, Brahman, Samsara, Karma, Maya. All of them line up in terms of the consciousness perspective when you compare it to the quantum entanglement. So I really think we should avoid the word spiritual. But when they come back, most of these NDEers, they engage what I call the yoke of Jesus, which is really just the golden rule, which is part of every religion. But in the West, wherever we go, every hotel room's got a Bible there. So the Bible is part of our culture. So we should realize that when they come back and they behave under what could be called the yoke of Jesus. And this is important, obviously, for Christians because they misunderstand all of this. And this, of course, is not to leave out Buddhism or Hinduism or Vedanta, because sattva and ahimsa, if you were to look up the word sattva and ahimsa, you could only be sattvic and practice ahimsa if you're doing 1 through 4. And 1 through 4 were embraced by Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine, both of whom didn't believe that a shred of the Bible actually happened. Okay, so I'm going to be keeping up the yoke of Jesus there because this is something a place that atheists and Christians could hopefully agree on, because neither one of them really understands it. It's pretty obvious. So this is what happens during a near-death experience. So a near-death experience, you can see, I just do get the AI feature. During NDE life reviews, it is not uncommon to feel guilt and shame, profound self-judgment during the NDE. There's no one judging us. We judge ourselves. Look at this. Even small reaching actions can seemingly have far-reaching consequences. This is why. So the NDEers, when they're out of their bodies, their suppression suits, you can see the playing field. And when we're back in the body, of course, we can't remember it, because it will be the point of being in a body if you can remember everything. But when they're out of the bodies, the ones who have long interactions, they see their playing field. They see the ripple effect, and how they've screwed themselves, many of them. Not all. This is why many come back. Those who have screwed themselves come back and engage the yoke. They engage the yoke. What do? Divorce, career changes, money issues changes, religion changes. Again, what happens to us when we die changes. Financial upheaval, all kinds of stuff. People become volunteers. Some become full-time volunteers. Why? To make up for the ripples. And to ensure better ripples into the future for them and everybody else. So look at what we're told by the Jesus character, who I don't think existed either, just like Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine. But look at this. If you want to be perfect, go sell your shit, give it to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Right? That's what the near-death experiencers do. No matter if they're atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, I don't know, Zoroastrians, it doesn't make any difference. Native Americans, it makes no difference. The same stuff happens across cultures. So this transcends cultures and reflects an eternal value amongst all true selves. So imagine if you have a near-death experience and you find out that you've given in to earthly temptation. false beliefs, material, mental and physical desires, all the temptations. You've given yourself to it. You freak out, like, oh my God, what do I do? I gotta do what Jesus said, or what Buddha said, or what Krishna said. Doesn't make any difference. Or what the blue fairy said. So for the rest of their lives, they engage in blue fairy, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha action because they want to go out purer than they left. Yeah, that's what they want to do. They want to go out this way, not giving in to the false self. So we still haven't figured out the best language yet, which we're going to get to, but it's important to look at the scenario that we go through when we have these near-death experiences. And there's thousands of them you can watch, and they're all very, very consistent. So when you think about the word consciousness, it's like, well, I'm aware that I'm awake, or you're listening to this video, which means that I'm conscious, talking into my computer, and you're conscious listening in your computer or phone. But what does that mean? How does that make us like what are we? And the word soul, people will say, well, I've got a body, a mind, and a soul. Like, okay, well, if you have a soul or a spirit, who are you? So you see, there's problematic language. And the NDEs have really helped clear it up very, very nicely, I think, for us, as well as a gateway document. So let's just say, for example, that this whole the whole religion, spirituality, whatever language really bothers one. Let's just look at the secular benefits of the yoke of Jesus. What's the benefit of being guilelessness or being guileless? And you can see massive health benefits. So no matter if there's just one life and that's all there is, obviously there isn't, but just say there was just one life and that's all there was. Look at the benefits of being guileless for one's health. Incredible. How about being pure in heart, like number 2 in the yoke of Jesus? Incredible secular health benefits. Same thing for being unselfish, exceptional health benefits. So no matter if one has a near death or not, and if one wants to have a better life and have better health, the yoke really is a really good approach to take. And so that's why, again, why they come back and we engage in profound self-judgment. That's why a lot of people come back. Like, I want to get back and fix my shit because of the profound self-judgment, not any deity judging anybody. So this really is the best available evidence that we have in terms of who we are when we die. When our false selves die, the true self, leaves. So the problem is when we're out, we're really, really smart, just like Elizabeth Crone tells us. When I was out, they taught me quantum physics, and I totally got it when I was out. So when the true self is out and not confused by the density of the human virtual reality skin suit, right? There's a dead false self, dead physical body, dead mind, no mind at all. Very clear what's going on. Very obvious. Makes complete sense. So when the true self is out, we're smart. When we're back in the body, we're not so smart. But when we're back in her case, she knows that she is not the body. And she knows why it's so important to engage in this behavior, which is the case for all individuals who had near-death experiences, who never thought of any of this stuff before. Obviously, if you were a deeply pious religious person, no matter what religion, you'd be like, oh, I'm glad I was a good boy or a girl. Okay, so when this happens, what should we call us that can basically resurrect a dead body? Because that's really what just happened there, right? We go from here, dead, resurrected. Well, and that's language that Christians might object to, but what does Jesus have to say about this? Well, because Christians think that the so-called human soul is weak and is going to hell unless you do all your Christian, made-up Christian stuff. But this is what we're told in the Gospel of Thomas. If the flesh, the false self and mind, came into being because of spirit, it is a wonder. And that is what happened, right? Ready? Dead body, no mind, boom, body, mind came alive. It's a wonder. But if the true self came into being because of the false self, which is what scientists have thought today even, right? consciousness is a product of the false self. And here we're saying, no, the true self, but if the true self came into being because of the false self, it's a wonder of wonders. This is what we're told in the Gospel of Thomas, and attributed to Jesus. I am amazed at how this great wealth, this true self, this great wealth has made its home in this poverty. So Christianity posits that the true self is weak, 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 and will go to hell for eternity unless it does. It's the Christian made-up story. But Jesus says that the true self is the great wealth. And so, and this great wealth, once again, when it's out of the body, it knows quantum physics. It knows all kinds of stuff. But when the great wealth is back in the body, dumb again. Not because the true self is dumb, it's because we're in these suppression suits. So the great wealth resurrects a dead false self and brings the mind back to life. So what should we call a great wealth with vast awareness that can know great details of quantum physics and beyond, that can resurrect dead bodies? I mean, what should we call that? Right? Because I'm just using the word true self here, but what should we call it? I think true self is a good word for it. But the most common are what? Soul, spirit, and then in my videos, in case you have not seen before, Atman, Brahman are language that's consistent with this, but really not so much, because Atman, Brahman really does speak to awareness, consciousness. So is this the right language though? I mean, see, the word soul, spirit is like, it's just the language doesn't fit with what we know from NDEs and from quantum mechanics. So it's much better, I think. So watch over here. The true self is what? Conscious energy. The true self is conscious energy. So when the true self's out of the body, it is conscious. The body's dead. When the awareness gets back in the body becomes alive, which means that we are conscious energy. The true self is conscious energy. And when we're out of the body, we feel much, much, much better compared to when we were in the bodies, because out of the body is our natural state, according to all these NDEs. And the great research, by the way, that's been done by the University of Virginia. Okay, so now, with this in mind, with this really good information in mind, does Christianity accept this? And we know they don't. Kali Yuga, demon-focused, dark ages Christianity, which is what exists today, rejects the yoke of Jesus over here on the far right above crazy eyes. They reject the yoke of Jesus. They reject Matthew 18:3 and Matthew 18:18, which is the way we loose. Matthew 18:18 is loosing our karmic bonds while we're here on earth. Otherwise, we bind ourselves more. So modern Christianity is of the Dark Ages and Kali Yuga, and they're just demon-focused. Even, this guy up top here, what's his name? I forget his name now. Graham, right. So Billy Graham says, you can't change yourself, but Jesus will help you to change. Well, that's a lie. Jesus himself says that the change is on us. Jesus said, unless you become guileless, because that's what little children are. They're guileless. That word isn't there, but become little children, guileless, until they're tempted and confused or traumatized. And so act and wise and consciously unselfish, right? But this one here, unless you change and become, meaning it's on us, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven. That's what's in his book. I'm just quoting their book. So Christianity, Dark Ages Christianity, lies. They reject the yoke of Jesus. And here you can see an example of this. I just did a Google for the AI response. Without Jesus, the human soul is not eternal. And that's a central belief among some denominations. So salvation only available, which is a lie, through faith in Jesus. Well, he didn't say that. He said you'll never enter the kingdom unless you again become uncorrupted, like little children that live as the great wealth. See, that's the thing. Little children live as the great wealth because they have yet to be corrupted. So it's our job to uncorrupt ourselves. And these Christian guys, they have no idea. They are scapegoaters and they are liars. They misrepresent the language and they cause Christian believers to assume that they are weak little souls headed for hell unless they do what these Dark Ages Christian preachers tell them to do. So it's much better for us to ignore all of that madness from the Dark Ages Christianity and consider the situation that we are in. When our current false self dies, we, the true self, which is a mass of conscious energy with form, just not carbon-based form, we leave. And what do? We judge ourselves. We judge ourselves. And then whatever happens thereafter happens thereafter. And why don't we know? Because what would be the point of going through these lives if we knew? It would make no sense. So I think you can see that not the best word to describe our true self, not the best word. This doesn't mean, what does this mean for the average American? For the average Hindu or Vedantist, no problem. True self, much better. And look at this book right here. The true self does not die. Why? Because we are a mass of conscious energy.